and then share my screen. Okay, here we go. Oh, no, that's not it. 1 second. So much stuff. Okay. There we go. You all can see this? Okay. Okay. So let's get started. I'm kind of excited about this class. This is almost my first time teaching it. I taught like a smaller version of this class, but this is like my first time teaching like the entire class. Really excited that you all are here. And I'm interested to know, your reasoning for coming, whether it be, you saw the word mindful and that caught your eye. Maybe you know someone who attended a class before who told you to come. Maybe you have never heard of this and that interested you, or maybe you've heard about mindful eating and wanted to know more. Whatever the reason, I want to make sure that you get what you came for. And so, like I said, please unmute, ask questions, comments, all of that. I will put a disclaimer out there that for this topic in particular, you kind of have to have an open mind, okay? It's a little like, it's more about the way we're thinking about food more than anything, this topic. And the things we're gonna be talking about in today's class, it's very simple, honestly. But it's a really good reminder that sometimes really simple things can make us successful in like our health goals, all right? So just wanna put that out there. Again, my name is Kelsey, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. We probably won't take the whole entire hour, just kind of depends on how many questions y'all have and all of that. Before we end today's class, heads up, I'll ask you to get a piece of paper and a pen, and we're gonna do a little questionnaire to kind of like see where you're at right now with mindful eating, and it'll be really fun. So that's coming. Okay, so first off, what is mindfulness? So have we heard this word before? Yeah. So we often hear this word more in the broader sense of like mental health. Maybe you've heard about it if you were seeing a counselor for stress, maybe in yoga, maybe in meditation. But it's kind of a newer concept to bring mindfulness to eating. And so what we're talking about today, we're still learning a lot about it, and that's what's so exciting. But really, mindfulness in itself is very simple. It means being present, being aware of where you are and what you're doing, and not being too concerned about what's happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future. It's just being like here and now. Is that hard for anyone? Yeah. I would say this is something I struggle with. I struggle with like just like being here and not thinking about all the things that's happening around me. And I think some of us, whether or not you deal with it all the time, we have times that our life gets more stressful. So it's really good to have good techniques so we feel like we can be at peace. So I really like this quote. It says, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. And if you are at peace, you're living in the present. So we're going to talk about how do we be present while we eat. So I would love for anyone to unmute and to share. I would love to know some ways that you practice being mindful, just like in general. So I'll go ahead and start. I would say one of the ways that I practice mindfulness, and this kind of sounds silly, but honestly, when I have like a warm drink, like I don't even care what I'm drinking, but if it's like a warm drink and I'm sitting down drinking it, that like decreases my heart rate. I feel like I'm present. I really enjoy that time of the morning. And that is a way I practice mindfulness. So does anyone want to share what they do?
I actually do that one, and my therapist actually has a little water heater and tea in his room for that exact reason.
I love that. I
Um,
love that.
Also, sometimes when I run, I try to do the mindfulness practices.
Yes. Like noticing what's going on around you, the sounds and the smells.
Or
And
just like more of a focus on, it's more like an internal one, like what I'm doing. Because
okay.
if I don't like, keep your shoulders back, but like in a positive way,
Yeah.
I just kind of give up and I'm like, I'm just gonna walk.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Don't feel pressured, but no. Okay, so there's a lot of ways we can practice mindfulness, and it's individual, what you enjoy doing. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it's just breathing. Honestly, breathing, it's so simple, but we forget to like think about it. And so there's a lot of ways to practice mindfulness, and I'm going to challenge you. The next time you're feeling stressed, we oftentimes turn to food when we're stressed and when we feel a lot of different emotions, right? So having other ways to cope with our stress that are not food related is super important, right? And so I'm a person who's an emotional eater, and we're going to talk about that later. We're going to talk about the importance of having other ways to cope with what's going on around us. So I thought this was really interesting. The average American spends 2.5 hours eating every day. Does that surprise anyone? That just seemed like a lot of time for me. I guess it kind of depends. Like for me, I guess I don't spend that long like just like sitting and eating and not doing anything else. But a lot of us, tend to be working while we eat or playing with the kids while we eat or looking at our phones. So we're going to talk about eating with intention and attention. But that's quite a bit of our day. Like that's 2.5 hours every day. That adds up. And so coming from a nutritionist, this is a very different concept. Enjoying eating, whether or not it's healthy, and just enjoying food in general is so important. That is a lot of time every day that we don't want to be unhappy. So just enjoying how food came to you, enjoying food no matter what it is, being joyful in that. If you get anything from today's class, that's what I want you to remember. So what's the goal of mindful eating? So if you think about it, we all need to eat to live. That is just a thing that we all have to do. That is something that we can all, we all have that similarity. And we want to feel physically better at the end of our meal than before. So that means not overeating, because we know sometimes when we overeat, we feel like blah after. But also we want to eat enough to where we are giving ourselves fuel, we are giving ourselves calories and energy, and we feel physically better. And so a lot of what mindfulness is and mindful eating, it's building a better relationship with food. Does anyone feel like they have a bad relationship with food sometimes? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think we all have times like that. And I strategically put this class right before the holidays because I think it's oftentimes during the holidays where we're eating more, desserts and that type of thing, and we can feel that food guilt. And we do not want that. And so we're going to talk about how do we have a better relationship with our food. So how can we bring the whole practice of mindfulness to eating? So it's eating with intention and attention. It's the practice of eating with the purpose of savoring every flavor. So I was going to do this during class, but I wasn't sure like where everyone was going to be watching class from. And I wasn't sure if anyone had food around them. So instead, I'm just going to have you do this outside of class. Hopefully you'll do it. But and actually the last time I taught this, we did this in class and it was super funny and also like weird feeling. But I just challenge you, pick like anything, like a clementine, a raisin, anything you want, just like a food. And I want you to try eating it and do nothing else other than eat it and think about the food that you're eating. Like, what does it smell like? What does it taste like? Use your 5 senses. And it's really interesting because it feels weird. And it's like, oh, what am I doing? But it's interesting how much you taste the food more when you're thinking about the food. And so I really challenge you to do that. That's like a really interesting little exercise. But we want to do that. We want to savor every flavor and enjoy the food we're eating. And then not only being focused on what is on our plate, but the entire experience of eating, that's part of being mindful. So whether or not you're a person who likes to eat with people or likes to eat alone, just being able to focus on like your surroundings, what you're like picking like a plate that you like to eat on, picking people you like to eat with, or eating alone if that's like a really nice thing for you if you don't get a lot of time alone. So eating is often mindless, consuming, and guilt-inducing. So oftentimes we're eating, does anyone like eat in front of the TV sometimes or while we're checking our social media? Or even, I eat while I'm like at my computer at work. And so it's easy to overeat and to eat mindlessly when we're doing that because we're not focused on the food. So really, we want to be focused on the food, and that needs to be the priority at that moment is the meal more than anything else. So mindful eating helps us resolve the troubled love-hate relationship with food. We love food, but we hate it. And instead, I want you to get rid of that hate, and I want you to just appreciate what food does for us. Okay, so you see this diagram at the bottom, right? And it shows food and it shows guilt, and then they overlap. And that is the things that don't go together. Food and guilt. I want you, if you can like imagine those two circles like drifting apart. I want no part of food to be guilty. Like I said, even if you're choosing a more unhealthy option, it's still everything in moderation, right? You shouldn't have to remove anything from your diet. You shouldn't. So I did a little bit of research on food guilt, and I thought it was very interesting. I think everyone today here is a woman, but this actually directly correlates with gender. It's really, really interesting. So women, we report feeling much more guiltier about what we're eating, and especially if it's considered unhealthy, more so than men. Does that surprise any of us? No. No. For some reason, and I think it's part of our culture and the way that we portray like beauty and body image. But from a young age, kind of we're taught, the way we're supposed to look, the way our body is supposed to be. And I think that's kind of where guilt stems. And so even teaching our kids this at a young age that, when we need to eat, then that is our body telling us what we need and we need to listen to it. So something that I do in my kids' wellness club that I feel like applies here is not viewing food as like good and bad food. So instead, I tell kids there's like, red, yellow, and green foods. Green foods are the foods we can eat all the time. So those are like our fruits and vegetables, our whole grains, all of our healthy stuff. Yellow foods are the ones that like we can eat every once in a while. And then red foods are the things that like are for special occasions. Like we stop and we think first, like, do we really need this? So I think trying to drift away from the whole good and bad food and instead viewing it that way, like everything has a place sometimes. And there's just some things that are more often and some things that we need to save and make it special. So even teaching our kids that, I think, because again, it kind of stems at a young age. So that's something that we can teach early on. So I don't know what our goals are, whether or not it's to lose weight or maintain our weight or even gain weight. The reason I've added this is a lot of people know mindful eating because they're trying to lose weight. It's often like associated with losing weight. And so I thought I would mention it in today's class. And it actually, research has shown that mindful eating can help us lose weight. And the reason for that is part of mindful eating is eating slowly. Does anyone feel like, do you eat fast, slow, normal?
Depends what I'm eating.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I've kind of like changed. I would say I was a really slow eater and now I'm fast. And I feel like school changed that for me because like you had like a certain like time to eat and you had to go. But now I eat like really fast. So this is something I have to work on. But part of mindful eating is taking your time to chew the food thoroughly. And if you're doing that, it's taking you more time to eat. And that's going to lead to being more satisfied at the end of the meal with less food and fewer calories. So no wonder it helps us lose weight, right? It actually takes, and this is later in the slide, I always jump ahead, but it actually takes our brain 15 minutes for us to realize we're full. And so if we are like eating and we're getting seconds and stuff and we're not allowing ourselves to sit with the food, it's really easy to overindulge. So if we're eating slowly, we're giving our bodies time to signal us like, hey, you're probably good. You probably don't need that another serving, So yeah, about 15 minutes to recognize that you're full. And then mindful eating can also help prevent binge eating. Binge eating is like when you eat a lot of food at once. And so mindful eating has been shown to reduce the severity and the frequency of binge eating episodes. So a lot of good benefits of mindful eating. Okay, now we're going to talk about stress. Does anyone feel stressed? Like right now? I feel stressed. Yeah. And if it's not right now, the holidays are often a more stressful time of year. So stress and overeating, it's interesting the correlation. In the short term, stress suppresses our appetite. So if you think like if something really stressful happens, like let's say, I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, well, I'll just use my own example. So like for me, I like deal with like getting the food to the kids in the classrooms. Every once in a while, like the caterer doesn't get there in time. And for me, that's stressful because I want to make sure the kids eat at their scheduled time. In that moment, my adrenaline goes through the roof and I am not hungry. I'm not thinking about eating. My appetite is suppressed. Okay. Does anyone feel like that? If you're like under a lot of stress, you're focusing on the problem, you're not hungry. Does that sound familiar? Kind of.
Yes and no.
Yeah. Okay. So in the short term, that's what it does. In the long term, though, and this is why you're probably like, because as stress persists, the stress hormone called cortisol is released, and that's an appetite stimulant. So if we're under stress for a longer period of time, like if we've had just a really stressful week, then we're going to be eating more because our body is like, that's actually hormonally, that's what our body is telling us we need. Isn't that interesting? So there is for sure a correlation there. All right. Questions about that? No? All right. So also, I don't know if anyone has experienced this, but stress does actually affect our food preferences. If you are under stress, you're more likely to choose foods high in fat and sugar, which like makes the cycle keep on going because then we get stressed about eating unhealthy and it just, it makes the cycle return. So just realizing you're not alone in that and realizing that that's a great opportunity when we're stressed to find another way to cope with the stress rather than food. And then we all know this, stress causes us to overeat, causes us to lose sleep, to exercise less, and to drink more alcohol, which all can lead to weight gain. All right. Has anyone heard of the book, Am I Hungry? I'm just curious.
No.
No.
Okay. Well, it's a great book. If you find at the end of this class, you're like, oh, that was like kind of interesting. I want to know more about it. It's a whole book about like intuitive eating, kind of the same thing as mindful eating. And in the book, it says this, when you're feeling the urge to eat, pause for a second and ask yourself, am I hungry? So simple, but honestly, this has made a really big difference in my life. And just try it. Just try it the next time you're hungry. And the cool thing about it is it gives you kind of permission to eat. At least it does for me. So like if I ask myself, am I hungry? And the answer is yes, like my stomach is growling and like I really feel like I need to eat. If the answer is yes, eat. Your body is really good at telling you what it needs. And then that is giving you permission to eat. And you do not need to feel guilty. You should never feel guilty, but you really should not feel guilty if your body's telling you you need to eat. If you're like, I'm not sure if I'm really hungry, then maybe wait a bit. Or maybe you're just bored, so maybe do something. Or maybe drink a glass of water. We often confuse being thirsty with being hungry. So many people struggle with the head hunger. So confusing wanting to eat with needing to eat. Does anyone find that? We don't always eat just because of the caloric need. We eat because food is good and, it's part of how we celebrate. Like during movie nights, I don't eat popcorn because I'm usually hungry. I eat it because it's part of the experience. So kind of just recognizing, start asking yourself that, am I hungry? So physical symptoms of hunger, these are the symptoms in where you're like, no, you should eat. If you're experiencing these, then that is giving you permission, hey, you should eat. Your body's telling you you need fuel. So if your stomach is growling, if your stomach is hollow or it feels empty, some people start kind of feeling nauseous, if you're really low on energy, trouble concentrating, difficulty making decisions, lightheadedness or a headache are symptoms of being hungry. And then irritability and crankiness. Does anyone get hangry?
Yes.
I definitely get hangry.
Mhm.
And it's funny because oftentimes I am not the first one to realize that I'm hangry. It's usually my family members or the people around me that are like, have you had anything to eat recently? Because you are a little irritable. They don't say it that nicely, but yeah, sometimes it's the people around us. If we're really busy, then it's like sometimes for some reason, food, we don't even think about eating. And so start recognizing these because our body tells us what we need. When we're little, we're actually really good at knowing this. And then as we age, we kind of like start forgetting that like things are simple. Like when we feel that we need to eat, we eat. And when we don't, we don't. Like it's very simple. So before you eat, run through the checklist, and this will help you decide if you're actually hungry or not, or if you're just wanting to eat. Okay, this is the mindful eating cycle, and this also came from the Am I Hungry book. And these are kind of the questions to ask yourself in order to make like a mindful setting for you to eat. So, and like you can just like run through this checklist before you start eating. So first is why. So asking yourself again that question, like, why am I eating? Is it because I need to eat or I just want to eat? And then when do you want to eat? Can you wait a while or do you need to eat right now? What do you want to eat? So choosing that option, how you want to eat. So do you want to eat, like if you're at work, do you want to eat at your desk or you want to go eat in the common room? How much do you want to eat? And then where do you want to eat? So do you want to eat with people? Do you want to eat alone? Do you want to go somewhere? So these are all of the things to ask yourself before you begin a meal time or a snack time. Okay, here's an example. So we are going to talk about the difference between hunger and appetite. All right, and so I'm gonna give you this example, and then if you guys can kind of like try to distinguish which one this is, if it's hunger or appetite, okay? And then we'll talk about it. So you go on a visit you go visit a friend one day after lunch, and you walk into her house, and you see a dish of chocolate on a small table in the living room, and suddenly you want to eat some chocolate. You have the urge to eat chocolate. What is this an example of? Is this hunger or is this appetite? Any thoughts?
Appetite.
Appetite.
Okay, I hear appetite. Any hunger people out there?
I
Okay,
don't think so.
all right. Well, you guys are, a smart bunch. You guys know what you're doing. Yes, appetite is the desire to eat while hunger is the need to eat. Okay, and so she probably wasn't hungry when she walked into her friend's house, but when she saw the chocolate, she was like, oh, that sounds really good. So it's not that she was eating because she was hungry, it's because she wanted to eat because that looked really good. So that is, yes, is appetite. So I really like the way to view this, that hunger is a cue from the body and appetite is a cue from the brain, right? That's kind of a good way to think about it. So hunger is like our stomach is rumbling and appetite is, oh, that sounds good. So that's the difference there. And then the third thing is emotional eating. So there's hunger, there's appetite, and then there's emotional eating. And this is when we eat to soothe negative emotions. So if we're stressed, if we're angry, if we're bored, sad, lonely, if we're eating to kind of comfort ourselves during that emotion. So whatever emotions drive you to overeat, the end result is the same. The effect is temporary and the emotions will return. So if we are, having a bad day and we're eating because it makes us feel good, it has that temporary happiness. But ultimately, when we're feeling these negative emotions, like I said, turning to other ways to cope rather than food and kind of thinking about the problem head on, because food will only help short term, right? Okay, so hunger, appetite, and emotional eating. And then a lot of mindful eating talks about the way that we talk to ourselves. Do we talk to ourselves with self-compassion or do we not? So something that someone told me this one time and I just really liked it. They were asking me if I talked to myself the way I would talk to my best friend. And most of us would not, right? We're really hard on ourselves. And I think kind of reframing the way that we're talking to ourselves like we were talking to our best friend is a really good way to look at it. Because when we're talking to our best friend, we are being comforting, we are being kind and supportive, and we're not always that way with ourselves. So when we're talking about the way we talk to ourselves, think of it that way. So here are two options, okay? And I can't see my whole screen, so I'm gonna try to read this. But first option, so let's say that you ate some pizza. And first option is that you regret eating that piece of pizza. You feel anxious and let's say you were trying to be healthy that week. Now you're cursing yourself for ruining any progress you've made on trying to eat healthy. All right, that's the first option. I feel like that's kind of common, right? We're like, food guilt immediately sets in, you know? And then versus the other option, this is the mindful eating option, realize, hey, it was just one meal and you really enjoyed those 2 pieces of pizza. It was just a couple pieces. You feel fine. The next choice you make will be one that doesn't involve pizza. Yay, move on. Okay, so I think oftentimes we think about it and we let it kind of ruin our night even. And so just letting ourselves enjoy good food. I am not a person that believes in removing good food from the diet at all, because food is good and we should enjoy it. Like I said, we spend 2.5 hours daily eating. So just, trying to choose the second option more often. All right. Is that something we feel like we can do? Being a little bit more compassionate to ourselves? Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So we kind of talked about this whole concept. Now let's talk about how do you start? How do you be more mindful? So first is beginning with your grocery list. And I had to bring it up in all of my classes. Grocery list is on there because I believe in grocery lists and I believe it can change your life. So begin with your grocery list. Always making a list is a great way to especially help with your budget, but also being healthy. Only put healthy stuff on there and don't, verge off your grocery list. And then consider the health of every item. So when you're making your grocery list, be a list that you are proud of. You want to show it to someone, be like, look at all of the things that I'm getting. There's not one bad thing on here, even though there's no bad foods. There's not anything more unhealthy than the other things on here. And then come to the table when you're hungry, but you're not starving. Because what happens when we come to the table when we're starving?
You overeat and eat anything.
Yes, for sure. I know that this is a thing at Thanksgiving. Both of my brothers did this. They made sure we didn't have Thanksgiving until 3 p.m. and they didn't eat anything ahead of time because they wanted to be able to eat so much at Thanksgiving. And so that's a good example of and then they ate a lot. And so trying to snack throughout the day so you're never starving and just coming to the table when you're hungry, but you're not gonna be tempted to overeat. So that's kind of a really simple thing to try. Also remove distractions. So trying not to eat in front of the TV, even putting your phone away. It's kind of hard, but putting your phone away and try just eating. It is really hard, honestly. It might be easier if you're sitting down with your family, but I try to do this. I live alone and I try to just eat and it's really difficult, but I've actually started really enjoying it because it gives me a break, a mind break. So trying to just, remove distractions and make eating about eating. And then start small. You can always get more. And by this, I mean start small in your portions. Okay, so, and honestly, something that is a really good tip that I do is I have bigger plates and smaller plates in my house. And I almost always choose smaller because it makes it seem like you have more food on your smaller plate. It's easy to fill up a big plate if you have it. And so just starting small and then giving yourself, again, the 15 minutes to see if you want seconds. And then if you are still hungry, you get seconds. That's fine. But, giving yourself time. And then pause before you begin. So whether it's saying grace if that's something you believe in, or even if it's just taking a moment and expressing gratitude for the food. And I think that's a really great thing to even have your kids get in the habit of doing. And just like express gratitude for everything that had to happen to get your food on your plate. Like farmers had to come like harvest the food, and then so much had to happen for it to get to the grocery store. And then you specifically pick that, you know, that celery off the, you know, vegetable rack. And so just so much had to happen, and so many people were part of the process in getting you your food. Just being grateful and expressing gratitude for what that food is going to do for you and give you fuel. And then eat with your senses. I talked about this. So notice the aroma of the food. This is really fun to do with your kids, and like be like asking them like, oh, what's the color? Like, what does it feel like? Is it hard? Like if it has a peel maybe, or is it bumpy? And then like what it sounds like when they're eating it, you know? And so just like, this is kind of like fun to have your kids be involved in. And then guys, stop eating when you're full. It's so easy, but it's so hard. So giving yourselves time, and no one likes that too full feeling. So just trying to stop when you're full and listening to your body is the main thing. Listening to your body. It'll tell you what you need. Okay, cultivating a mindful kitchen. Let me see how we're doing with time. Okay. So eat at consistent times and, oh yeah.
I have a problem with that, with Mason,
Okay.
on this, with the child, because one, he'll say he's full, and I'm thinking, okay, he's full, but he's right after wanting candy or something else. So how do I really know he's full?
Yeah. That's a hard one. I would say really trying, if kids know that after dinner there's the option to snack, they'll probably choose snack foods. So maybe making dinner the last thing that they'll eat for the day, because it's not that great for us to eat late anyways. So if they know that that's their last opportunity that day to eat something, they might be more likely to eat during the meal.
We offer the most boring food in our cupboard. It's usually a piece of bread. You can have butter on it if you want, but nothing more than that. Just a piece of bread.
Yeah. Sometimes we do this in the classroom. We try to make sure that the kids know, like, it's not an option. Like when they're eating at mealtime, that is their option for food, and they're not going to get another opportunity to eat for a little while. So if they're hungry, then that is what they have to choose from. So I know it's hard though, but kids are actually really good at knowing when they're full and when they're not. So kind of trusting that too. But yeah, great question.
That's where I have the problem. I guess being a grandmother, I'm like, no, I can't let the baby go without, you know?
Yeah, and that's actually a great point. A lot of us think that our kids need to eat more than they do because we're looking at it from like an adult's eye. Like for us, that would not be enough food, but kids need a lot less than us, and usually they're getting enough. But I know it's a little hard. But thank you. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So cultivating a mindful kitchen, eating at consistent times and places. This is actually great. I talk about this a lot in my picky eating class because that is really important for kids to be on a schedule, especially if they have trouble eating. But making sure you actually will start getting hungry around the same time every day. And so that's a great way to and also eating together as a family, and everyone knows like dinner is at this time. That's a great way to cultivate a mindful kitchen. Also sitting at the table. I have like a beautiful table that I don't sit at enough, and I need to sit at it more. It's very easy for me to like sit on the couch and stuff like that, but then it's very easy to make food, like I am not focused on the food at all. So sitting at the table as a family, not only does it help being mindful, but it's also just great bonding time as a family. Like growing up, I love talking about my day with my parents at the dinner table. Like that's just a great bonding experience. And then, this is a big one. I don't know if any of you will like get takeout or have like leftovers and like still eat it out of like the containers it came in. And so trying to put your food like on an actual special plate or bowl will help you be more mindful of how and what you're eating. I have like special like plates and stuff that I like more than others, especially bowls. And I try to like pick those out when I'm trying to make it special. It's kind of silly, but it works. And then eating with others when you can. This will help you slow down and you can talk about the food. And I really enjoy having meals with other people or like coffee. Just helps you like slow down and just be together, you know? And then consider what you bring into your kitchen and what things you and how you put things away. So what foods, if you like think about your kitchen right now, or even if you can look at your kitchen right now, like what things are in sight? Like what foods are out? I try to like have like my fruit bowl like out. So it reminds me to eat fruit, and all of my like more unhealthy options are like in the back high up on my shelf, because if I'm seeing it all the time, I'm more likely to eat it. Has anyone found that?
Well, I have to put everything away because we have little hands. Um,
Okay.
so like the only thing that the kids regularly see sitting out are like fruits that you don't necessarily need to put in the fridge right away, or vegetables when they're in season, and canned goods.
Okay.
It's gotten to the point because they're both so strong, they just open up the fridge. So sometimes you have to hide the fun stuff in the fridge, or honestly, we have to lock it sometimes so we don't come out to a giant mess.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And you're all in the same, you know, similar situations with young kids. So yeah, this might not be the best tip right now if you feel like you can't leave things out. But once you feel like you can, you're not worried about that as much, trying to make sure you have like healthy foods in sight, it really does help. Like it reminds me to like, oh, like I haven't had like any fruit today. I should just eat an apple, like especially if I get hungry. So having healthy foods around and more unhealthy foods, like you have to work for it a little bit. You might have to get a step stool and get at that highest shelf. It helps me, so it might help you. And then the advantages of eating. Oh yeah.
So we have a multi-generational family unit going on with my daughter and my grandchildren living with me. The thing is, I found that things that are for me, I bought a refrigerator for my room and I keep them in my room. He knows how to get into the refrigerator and get my stuff, and he just goes in and gets his things that he wants. So my daughter says, get a lock for your fridge. But I'm in the mindset where, why should I have to lock it up when he should be able to control himself?
Right. No, I definitely understand that. Yeah. Something that, and I don't know why this just came to me. I talk about this in one of my other classes. This might help him not like choose your options. Trying and I know some of you have heard me say this before, but like trying like a healthy or like a snack bucket. And this bucket is where you turn your kids to whenever they get hungry. But the cool thing is you are the one that put the stuff in the snack bucket. So everything in there is healthy and you've already like made the choice to put it in there. But then they still think that they're choosing because there's options in there. So they have the freedom of choice, but really like you chose. Maybe something to try. But yeah, that's kind of something that's been helpful for some of the families. Actually, a family told me about that in the first place, and I just keep telling it because I think it's helped quite a few people. So might be something to try. And then I don't know, like I said, if you're a slow or fast eater, but if you are a person like me who just like naturally eats fast, being really present about how fast you're eating and making an effort to slow down. Again, this will help our brain catch up to our stomach and help us realize when we're full. So I've never actually counted. That might be like a fun little exercise to try, even with your kids, even to try too. But they say to chew your food 20 to 40 times before swallowing. 40 seems like a lot. Even 20 seems like a lot, but just try it. It'll kind of get you an idea, like give you an idea, especially if you're not chewing your food enough. It'll help you kind of give you an idea of how you're doing right now, give you kind of like a guideline. And then eat small bites. So it actually might be helpful to put your utensils down in between your bites to help you slow down. I've actually done this before in a little exercise nutrition class. It was really interesting. If you're forced to put your utensils down, you will eat slower. So something to try.
I don't put my utensil the whole way down, but I do like put it almost at the table. And I think it's just a weird habit I picked up.
Yeah, well, that's
but
great.
I also just use smaller utensils.
Oh, that's a great, yeah.
I don't like, so I have some sensory issues, so I don't like big utensils to begin with.
Uh-huh.
And part of it is because I eat the food too fast. Like I'm putting too much food in my mouth because it's just too much for my particular person.
Yeah, it's the same idea of using like the smaller plate, using the smaller utensils. That's a great idea. I love that. Thank you. Love that.
And also with the 15 minutes, I don't actually put the food on the table. If you want seconds, we have to get up and get it. And if for me, it's am I hungry enough to get up out of my seat and go over there
Yes.
or not?
I know, just a couple steps can make such a big, it makes you pause and it makes you think like, oh, like, do I really need this? So great, awesome tips. Love it. So we all have small kids, teaching our kids to eat mindful. So I kind of mentioned a lot of things that we can like kind of, support them in doing now, but a lot of that starts now. So allowing them to serve themselves. We used to do this in the classroom and it was so great. And right now, due to COVID, we're not able to. We're going to get back to it, but that's such a great thing for them to start learning how much they need. And then eating without distractions, really important for kids too, especially if they're picky eaters. Again, having them also wait before seconds, making sure you're not rushing. So especially if you have like an activity at night, giving yourself enough time ahead of time to eat. And so you're not rushing. And then growing a garden is honestly a great, great way to involve kids in the process for them to actually realize like where their food is coming from. It makes them be able to express gratitude for their food more if you allow them to do that. So I know it's a little not the season for that right now, but later on in the school year, I actually do a kids gardening class and it is super fun. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. Okay.
I would like to do that.
It is really, really fun. We actually do a pizza garden. And so you actually get all of the materials and everything. And we make it's like tomatoes and cilantro, everything that you would need to make a pizza. And it's so much fun. So yeah, definitely. I'll post everything on Dojo. Okay, I know we are running a little low on time, so I'll wait on this video and see if we have time at the end, but I would love to do this questionnaire before we run out of time. So I'm gonna give you like a couple seconds, a minute to go get a piece of paper and a pen real quick if you don't already have one on you.